Welcome to Boring Cinema. Tonight, we gently revisit the story of Interstellar. Settle in, relax, and let the film unfold slowly. The film begins with voices. They talk about dust. They talk about the way the dust came. There was wheat, and the wheat is gone. There were other crops, and those are gone too. Her absence is present in the house in the way of absences that have not become comfortable yet, that are still being accommodated. Cooper was a pilot. The space program is gone now. She is also the child who has noticed something in her room. The something is a ghost. Books fall from her shelves in patterns that are not random. Dust settles on the floor of her room in lines and shapes that are not the patterns of ordinary settling. Cooper comes to look at the bookshelf. He studies the dust patterns on the floor. The dust is arranged in lines. The lines have a structure. The structure, when he looks at it long enough, becomes legible. Binary code. The binary code encodes coordinates. Cooper takes Murph in the truck and follows the coordinates. It is not abandoned. The project is called NASA, or it is what NASA became when NASA was officially closed, and its people dispersed and its funding redirected to the corn. The work they continued is the work of trying to save the human species from the death that the world on the surface is moving toward. He knows who Cooper is. The plan is called the Lazarus missions. The probes were followed by 12 crewed missions. The Lazarus missions, named for the raised dead, each mission going through the wormhole to one of 12 planets that the probes identified as potentially habitable. One astronaut per mission, sending back data on whether the planet could support human life. 3 of those missions sent back encouraging data. The plan requires someone to go through the wormhole, visit those 3 planets, determine which one is viable, and transmit the information back so that the human species can follow. The plan has 2 components that Brand calls Plan A and Plan B. Plan A is the salvation of the people on Earth. It requires Brand to complete an equation, a gravitational equation, that has been resisting solution for decades, that, if solved, will allow the colonization ships to be launched from Earth with the populations they need to carry. Plan B is the salvation of the species without the people currently living. It involves carrying 5,000 frozen human embryos through the wormhole to the viable planet and beginning a colony there without the people on the surface, without Cooper's children. Brand tells Cooper about both plans. He asks Cooper to pilot the mission. He tells him that the mission is humanity's last chance. Cooper's daughter does not want him to go. She is 10 years old, and her mother is dead, and her father is the person who makes her world make sense, who taught her how to look at problems, who validated the ghost in her room when everyone else dismissed it, who is the specific and irreplaceable person she needs to have in her house and in her life. She is 10 years old, and she is standing at the door of his truck as he prepares to leave, and she is doing the thing that children do when they have run out of arguments and are left with the truth of the feeling itself. She is asking him not to go. She says he has to come back. He says he will. He says he promises. He drives away. The truck drives away down the dirt road, and she is standing in the dust watching it go, and this image, the child in the dust watching the parent drive away into the distance, and the distance swallowing the truck, is the image the film will return to across its entire running time. The image that anchors everything that follows in something specific and personal and small enough to be held in the hands, in contrast to everything that follows, which is too large to be held in anything. The mission launches with a crew of 4 Cooper pilots. Dr. Amelia Brand, the professor's daughter, herself a physicist and a member of the scientific team that has been working on the gravitational equation, is the mission's scientific lead. Romilly is a physicist and astronomer. Doyle is the 4th. TARS and Case are the mission's robots. Not humanoid robots, but rectangular blocks of articulated panels, able to reconfigure themselves for different tasks, given to a specific kind of dry humor that has been programmed into them by someone who understood that the people they would be working with would need, on a journey of this duration and this seriousness, something that could occasionally be not entirely serious. The launch sequence has the specific quality of a thing that has been prepared for by an enormous amount of work, and that, in its actual execution, is nevertheless overwhelming. The weight and the noise and the force of it, the specific experience of leaving the planet in a vehicle that does not use flight, but uses thrust to simply push itself away from the ground with enough force to escape the gravity that has been holding it. The family watches from the farm. Tom and Donald and Murph, who did not come to see him off at the facility because she was angry, and her anger is the anger of someone who believes they have been abandoned and who cannot do anything with that belief except refuse to participate in the departure. She watches from the farm instead, from the roof, and she watches the horizon and the direction of the launch site, and she sees the contrail climbing up through the brown sky into the blue above the dust, the line of white against the sky that is her father going away from her, and she stands on the roof in the dust and watches it until it is gone. The journey to Saturn takes 2 years. The film compresses this without ceremony. A transition, time passing, the crew in whatever the state of the journey is at any given moment, doing the things that the journey requires. They learn, in the course of these 2 years, more about the situation they are flying toward. They learn about the wormhole, about its specific physical character, about what the data from the Lazarus missions suggests about what is on the other side of it, about the 3 candidate planets, and what each of the mission members sent back before their signal went silent. They learn about each other in the way of people spending 2 years in a small space together. Not the sharp, compressed learning of an emergency, but this slow, accumulated learning of proximity over time. The specific knowledge that comes from seeing someone in all their moods and all their states, from eating and sleeping and working alongside them, until the novelty of their personality has been replaced by the familiarity of a person fully known. The wormhole appears near Saturn. This is a specific choice. The wormhole could be anywhere in the solar system, but it is near Saturn, near the planet of rings and storms. And the approach to the wormhole takes them close enough to Saturn to see it as it is seen only from very close. Enormous, ringed, the rings themselves visible as individual structures of ice and rock, orbiting the planet at the specific precision of celestial mechanics. Cooper sees this, and the seeing of it has the quality of something paid for by the journey. The first of the images that the film gives them in space that have no practical function, that are not information, but simply the experience of being in a place where such things are visible. The specific beauty of the outer solar system that is available only to those who go there. The wormhole is a sphere, not a flat circle, not a hole in the fabric of space in the two-dimensional way that the word implies, but a spherical distortion in the geometry of space, a ball of warped space-time that the ship approaches along its equatorial plane. Looking into it from outside is looking into a distortion. The stars behind it are visible through it, but they are wrong, their positions displaced by the gravitational lensing of the wormhole's mass, the light of the universe bent around and through the structure of the passage. Cooper looks at it on the approach and describes it to Romilly, who is on the other side of the ship doing the things that physicists do when they are in the presence of a phenomenon that validates the theoretical framework they have been working within, and that is nevertheless astonishing to see with the actual eyes they go through. The transit is not the transit of science fiction tradition, not the jump to hyperspace visual shorthand of tunnel and speed and the specific aesthetic of faster-than-light travel. It is stranger than that. It is the experience of moving through a space that is not the space of the universe they left, that has a geometry that the human perceptual system was not designed to process, that looks and feels and behaves in ways that the brain struggles to map onto any prior experience. Cooper pilots through it with the specific focus of someone who knows that the piloting here is not the piloting of ordinary space, and who is adapting in real time to the information his instruments are giving him, which is different from the information his senses are giving him, which is different from what the physics of the situation describes. They emerge on the other side. The universe on the other side of the wormhole is different. Not different in its fundamental physics, but different in its configuration, its specific arrangement of stars and planets, and the geometry of space around a massive object that is the first thing they encounter on the other side. The massive object is a black hole. It is called Gargantua, and it is the largest thing any of them have ever been near, the largest thing any human being has ever been near, a black hole of such mass that its gravitational influence shapes the orbits of the planets around it and distorts time itself in ways that are not theoretical but practical, that the mission must account for in every decision it makes about where to go and how long to stay. Gargantua. The word itself carries the scale. Rabelaisian, gigantic, the name of a giant from a tradition of writing about giants, applied to the largest object they will ever encounter. It sits at the center of what they can see from the Endurance, from the mission ship, which is a ring-shaped structure that spins to produce its own gravity, the ring rotating around a central hub, a design that is practical and that is also beautiful in the specific way of things designed for function that achieve beauty incidentally, whose beauty is the beauty of the solution rather than of decoration. From the Endurance, Gargantua is not a point of darkness in the sky. It is a presence, a defined and specific object. Its event horizon, the boundary that light cannot cross, outlined against the accretion disk that surrounds it. The superheated matter spiraling into it, burning with a light that has the quality of the most extreme light imaginable. The light of material being drawn into nothing at the edge of a singularity. They have arrived. They have the 3 candidate planets to visit, the 3 surviving Lazarus mission signals to investigate, the question of which planet can sustain human life to answer. They have limited time. They have the specific constraint of a mission that cannot afford to spend too long in any one place, because the fuel budget and the time budget are both finite and both precious. And they have Gargantua, which complicates everything, whose gravity distorts time around the nearest of the three planets in ways that mean hours spent on the planet's surface correspond to years of time passing on the Endurance, which means any time spent on the planet close to Gargantua is time borrowed from the lives of the people waiting above. The first candidate planet is Miller's planet, the planet of the mission member named Miller, who sent back the most encouraging of the three signals, and whose signal, Brand argues, suggests the possibility of a viable world. The planet is close to Gargantua. Very close. Its orbit around the black hole puts it deep in Gargantua's gravitational field, and the time dilation at the planet's surface is extreme. Every hour on the planet corresponds to 7 years of time passing elsewhere. They discuss this. They calculate. Cooper decides to go. They go. The planet's surface is an ocean. Not a planet with an ocean. The ocean is the planet, or nearly so, a shallow sea extending to every visible horizon, with the sky above it, and Gargantua visible as the largest object in that sky, the black hole occupying an enormous arc of the horizon, with its accretion disk haloing it, the light of the disk falling on the water. The water is shallow, no deeper than their knees in the places they wade through, and the specific quality of the shallowness is unnerving rather than reassuring. A shallow ocean implies that the planet's surface conditions are extreme in some way, that the depth of the sea is limited by something, that whatever shaped this world did not produce the topography of ordinary geology. What shaped this world is tidal forces. The gravity of Gargantua pulls at the planet's water in the way that the moon pulls at Earth's oceans, but with an enormously greater force, and the result is waves. Not the waves of ordinary oceanography, but tidal waves, in the literal sense. Waves of water hundreds of feet tall, moving across the surface of the ocean, with the speed and the scale of things that have no precedent in any experience that any of them has, that have no frame of reference in any survival training or any prior mission that would allow them to process what they are seeing in the few moments they have to process it. They see the first wave on the horizon. Cooper sees it first, or sees what becomes clear is a wave. A dark line along the horizon that resolves as it approaches with the speed of something impossible, into a wall of water of a height that cannot be processed in the ordinary way. Doyle dies. The wave takes him before the ship can get airborne, takes him in the specific way of something that is simply too large and too fast to be survived by someone who is in its path when it arrives. Cooper gets the ship airborne. Brand is in the water and has to be pulled out, and Cooper pulls her out as the wave passes beneath them, and the ship rises on the crest of it and comes down the other side, and Doyle is gone. They have spent approximately an hour on the planet. An hour. On the Endurance above them, Romilly has been waiting. He waited 7 years. He passes those 7 years in a way that he manages as best he can. Hibernation for some of it, research for the rest. The 7 years of waiting that were an hour for the people he was waiting for. He is older when they return to the Endurance. Not dramatically older. Not the aging of a man who has lived a full 7 years of events and changes, but the aging of a man who has been waiting in a ship in space for 7 years, which has its own particular quality. The aging of patience rather than of experience. The aging of someone who held a position, for a very long time and is now, finally, moving again. Cooper receives a batch of messages from Earth. They have been accumulating for the 7 years. Messages from Tom, who is grown now, who has taken over the farm, who has a life that Cooper has missed entirely, a life that was being lived on Earth while Cooper was spending an hour on the surface of a planet. Tom's messages are the messages of a son reporting to a father who cannot respond in real time. The accumulation of the small events of a life, the events that are important in the scale of an individual life, but that have no way of being communicated with the weight they deserve across the distance and the time dilation that separates them. And then there are the messages from Murph. Murph, who is now 23 years old, who has become a physicist and has been working with Professor Brand on the gravitational equation, who has grown up in the time that Cooper was traveling. The Murph in the messages is not the child who stood in the dust watching the truck drive away. She is a young woman, brilliant and angry in equal measure, angry in the way of someone who was promised a thing and has not received it, and who has organized a significant portion of their interior life around the anger at the absence of the promised thing. She does not say she is angry in the message. She says that today is her birthday and that she is the age her father was when he left. She says what she needs to say in the specific way of someone who has been composing this message for a long time and who has arrived at the simplest possible form of it. She says, and she turns away from the camera. Cooper watches the messages in the supply room of the Endurance alone. He does not watch them with the others. This is a private thing. The watching of the accumulation of what he has missed, the specific cost of the mission paid in years of his children's lives. He watches, and the watching takes him through what Tom has become, and what Murph has become, and what he has not been present for. And then he does not cry in the way of someone managing themselves, but he does the thing that happens before crying, the thing the face does when it is receiving something that it cannot process in the ordinary way. He is alone in the supply room, and the messages have finished playing, and the screen is dark, and he sits with what the messages have told him about the price of the hour on the planet. There are 2 candidate planets remaining. One is Dr. Mann's planet, the signal that Professor Brand has always considered the most promising, the signal from the mission member whose work and reputation Brand trusts most. The other is Edmonds's planet, which Amelia Brand advocates for with a passion that Cooper reads as something other than purely scientific. She was in love with Edmonds before the mission, and her advocacy for his planet is genuine, but not untouched by the desire to go where he went, to find him, to know what happened to him. They vote. They choose Mann's planet. They go toward Mann. The journey to Mann's planet takes time. Not the compressed time of extreme gravity, but the ordinary time of space travel, time that passes at the ordinary rate for all of them. Time that is also passing at the ordinary rate on Earth. Time in which Cooper's children are growing older while Cooper does not age at the same pace. The journey gives the crew time to talk, to be with each other in the specific quality of people in a very small space, in a very large void, to have the conversations that the busyness of the mission's active phases did not permit. Brand and Cooper talk. They talk about the planets and about the data and about the choices ahead. And they talk about something else, about the nature of love and whether love is evidence of something real, something that has a physical basis in the universe, rather than being simply a biological mechanism. Brand says something that Cooper resists, that he responds to with the pragmatism of a pilot and an engineer. She says that love is the one thing we're capable of perceiving that transcends dimensions of time and space. She says that she believes love is an artifact, an evidence of something real. That the way love allows people to feel things across distances that should make feeling impossible. That the way her love for Edmonds is as present and specific in the void of space as it was in the room where they were together suggests that love is not simply a neurological process, but something with ontological weight. Cooper does not fully accept this. He is not built for it, or not yet. He is built for the thing that can be measured, and the decision that can be calculated, and the instrument reading that can be verified. The conversation ends without resolution, which is the right ending for it. The film does not want to resolve this yet because the resolution will come later, in a place that neither of them can anticipate from where they currently are. The farm in the film's opening sequences has a specific quality that the film takes time to establish. A quality of something that was built for more than it is currently being used for, that has the proportions of ambition without the fulfillment of ambition, that is both comfortable and somehow wrong in its comfort, like a large coat worn by someone smaller than the coat was made for. Cooper drives his harvester through the corn with the competence of someone who is very good at what he is doing and who is not being challenged by what he is doing, and the corn stretches to the horizon in every direction with the brown sky above it. And the specific combination of competence and limitation in that image is the film's first statement about what it is doing with its main character, placing a large capacity in a small space and watching the pressure build. The parent-teacher meeting at the school is the film's most direct statement of the world's orientation. The orientation away from the outward-looking ambitions of the technological era and toward the inward-looking necessities of a civilization that needs to feed itself. The teacher tells Cooper that Murph has been bringing her grandfather's textbooks to school, textbooks that show the moon landings, that talk about the space program as a real and accomplished thing, and the teacher says these books contain incorrect information. The official position in this world is that the Apollo missions were a hoax, that the spacecraft and the moon landings were a propaganda exercise during the Cold War, a performance designed to bankrupt the Soviet Union rather than an actual achievement of human spaceflight. The teacher says this with the complete sincerity of someone who believes it, who was taught it, who has never had a reason to question it, and who is now communicating the world's understanding of its own history to a parent who knows that the understanding is wrong. Cooper does not argue. He argues in the way of someone who has been arguing about this for long enough to know that the argument does not produce the result that argument is supposed to produce, that the world has made its peace with the revised history, and that disturbing the peace of it serves no practical purpose. He argues, and then he stops arguing, and the teacher gives him a pamphlet about the agricultural college and the opportunities available to someone with Murph's abilities in the management of crops, and Cooper takes the pamphlet, and they go home. The broken harvester on the dirt road is the scene that the film needs most before Cooper leaves, because it is the scene that shows the mechanism of inheritance, The specific way that Cooper transmits to Murph not just values, but a method, a way of being with problems that she will carry with her for the rest of her life. The harvester breaks down. Cooper climbs under it and assesses. He could call for help, and he chooses not to, and the reason he chooses not to is the reason he wants to show Murph. He wants her to see that a broken thing is not a catastrophe, but a problem. That a problem is addressable. That the addressing of it is the specific human activity that he values most. He walks her through the diagnosis. What is wrong, why it's wrong, what the wrong thing being wrong means for the system it is part of. And Murph follows along with the focused attention of a child who has been waiting for this kind of lesson, who was built for exactly this kind of exchange, and who absorbs it with the completeness of something being received into the right vessel. It is also the scene where Murph brings up the ghost. She says there is something in her room. Cooper says there is not. She says there is. He does not dismiss this. He does not dismiss her the way the teacher dismissed the moon landing textbooks, with the comfortable certainty of someone who knows what is true and has no space for what does not fit. He files it. He takes the information that his daughter is observing something in her room, and he puts it in the place where things go when they need more data before they can be addressed, and he moves on with the harvester. This is the specific quality of a scientist father, a person whose intellectual disposition toward the world is also his emotional disposition toward his children, who treats Murph's claim about the ghost with the same openness he would bring to an anomalous instrument reading. It might be nothing, it might be something, keep watching. The corn harvester that comes through the field uninvited, the automated military drone that has been following solar power, that has been flying in the area for years since whatever conflict put it in the air, and that Cooper manages to ground and repurpose, is a small incident in the larger context of the film's story. But it tells us important things about who Cooper is and what the world has done to him. He brings the drone down with the ease and the quiet satisfaction of someone exercising a skill they rarely get to use. And the satisfaction is not the satisfaction of showing off, but of being, for a moment, exactly what he is good at. And the drone solar panels, which the family can harvest for power, are the practical benefit of the operation, useful, immediately useful, the product of a skill applied to the world's current conditions rather than of the conditions the skill was developed for. He is good at finding the useful thing in the available materials. He will be doing this in space. The night of the dust storm, the storm that seals the house and produces the specific dense quality of a world trying to get in, that settles on every surface and makes the air itself an object, is when the ghost makes its most legible communication. The family is at the dinner table when Murph leaves to go to her room, and Cooper follows her. And the dust that has come through the window and settled on the floor of her room is arranged in lines, in the binary code that turns out to be coordinates, the specific structured pattern that the ghost is using as the most accessible language for the communication it needs to make. Cooper looks at the lines of dust and the specific transition on his face, from the father following his child to the pilot reading data, is the film's most important moment of characterization. The two things he is, father and pilot, both present in the same face at the same moment, both contributing to the response the moment requires. The drive to the facility is its own contained journey. Cooper and Murph in the truck at night, following the coordinates through the dark country with the authorities somewhere behind them and the destination ahead, and neither of them fully certain what the destination will be. Murph is complicit in this in the way of a child who understands that what they are doing is not exactly authorized, and who is doing it anyway because what they are doing is right in a deeper sense than the authorization covers. She is 10 years old, and she is willing to follow her father into the dark on the strength of dust patterns in her room, which is not the disposition of a timid child, but of one who has been given, by her father's example, the disposition to follow the interesting and important thing wherever it leads. The facility. The gate comes down in front of the truck, and the security system scans them and then opens for them rather than stopping them. And the opening is itself a communication. Whoever runs this facility was expecting them, or was expecting someone who would arrive following these coordinates. And the arrival of Cooper and Murph in a truck at night is the expected thing rather than the unexpected thing. The facility below ground has the quality of a world that has been maintained in secret, while the world above it changed. The equipment is current, the personnel are organized and purposeful. There is no dust in this facility. They are doing something real here, something that has been going on without the rest of the world knowing about it. And the moment Cooper enters the facility is the moment the film's two registers, the dust and the farm and the contracted world of the surface, and the larger ambition of the story beneath it, come together and begin to move in the same direction. Professor Brand's explanation of the mission, the full explanation given to Cooper in a room full of schematics and equations and the accumulated evidence of years of work, is the scene where the film commits to its scale. He is not explaining a small thing. He is explaining the largest thing. He is explaining that the human species is going to die on Earth unless something happens, and that the something requires someone to fly through a wormhole near Saturn and investigate 3 planets and determine which one can support human life, and that the someone needs to be Cooper. Because Cooper is the person with the specific combination of piloting skill and quick thinking and scientific temperament that the mission requires, and that no one else available possesses. He makes this case with the directness of someone who has been waiting to make it, and who does not want to waste the time or the attention of the person across from him with softening or preamble. Cooper listens with the directness of someone who was born to hear this case, who receives it not with disbelief, but with recognition, the recognition of a person who has been underemployed for a decade, being shown what they were supposed to be doing all along. The decision is made in stages, and each stage has its weight. He talks to Donald, who is practical about it in the way of an older person who has made peace with the world's tendency to take things away. He drives Murph home, drives her to the farmhouse, not to the facility, because she is not going to the facility. She is going back to her life, to the farm and the school and the ghost in her room and everything that is her world without him in it. And she is furious. She is 10 years old, and she is furious with the specific and complete fury of a child who is receiving the information that the most important person in their world is leaving them, who has not been prepared for this, who has not agreed to it, whose agreement was not sought because the mission does not ask children for their agreement. She goes to her room and she stays in her room, and she will not come out to say goodbye. Cooper stands outside her door. He could open it. He does not. He stands outside it with the awareness of everything that is on the other side of it. His daughter, who is furious, the ghost who is him who has not yet sent the message that will arrive in this room. And he stands with this knowledge that he cannot have yet. And the film holds him in this moment. The man standing outside the closed door for a moment that is longer than its practical content requires, because this is the moment the film is asking you to hold in your hands for the next 3 hours. He leaves. He gets in the truck and he drives away, and Murph watches from the roof, and the contrail rises into the brown sky. The Endurance is a ring, a torus, a wheel, a structure that rotates around its central hub so that the people inside the ring experience a centrifugal force that substitutes for gravity. The design is practical and elegant. No gravity means no orientation. No orientation means no direction. No direction makes everything harder. And the rotating ring provides a direction. Down is toward the outer edge of the ring. Up is toward the hub. That allows the crew to function in the ordinary way of people who know which way is down. The ship is large enough to have separate modules connected by the ring, large enough for the crew to have some separation of space and therefore some approximation of the privacy that people who are going to spend months together in a small space are going to need. The Endurance carries them to Saturn in the 2 years that the film passes through without stopping. 2 years of ordinary time. Time that passes at the same rate for Cooper in the ship as for Murph on the farm. Time in which Murph is 12 and then 13 and then 14, and in which Cooper is aging at the ordinary rate. The messages that travel between them during these 2 years are the specific messages of a father trying to be present across a distance that prevents presence. The jokes and the questions and the updates about the mission and the things he notices about the universe from where he is, and Murph's responses, which the film does not give us directly, but whose content we can infer from Cooper's responses to them. The responses of a father who is listening and who is trying to be there from where he cannot be there. The approach to Saturn brings with it the approach to the wormhole. And the approach to the wormhole brings with it the quality of something, and that has been theorized and modeled and prepared for, that is now visible through the window in its actual form, which exceeds the preparation in the specific way that things that exceed theory exceed it, not by being worse, but by being stranger, by having a texture and a presence and a specific quality of realness that no model fully captures, because the model is always working from insufficient data until the thing itself is present. Romilly looks at it through his instruments, with the expression of someone who has spent years thinking about this specific phenomenon, and who is now in the presence of the phenomenon, and who is finding that the years of thinking were not wasted, but were also not sufficient. He is thrilled by it. He is frightened by it. He takes notes. The wormhole transit has a quality of managed disorientation. Cooper and the crew moving through a passage that does not behave like a passage, that has spatial properties that the instruments are reading in real time, but that the human perceptual system is not built to process. And the management of the disorientation is the work of the transit. Staying focused on the instruments, trusting the reading rather than the sense experience. Flying through the impossible with the same body and the same nervous system that was designed for the possible and making it work. Cooper pilots, TARS monitors, the crew holds on, and then they are through, and Gargantua is before them, and the mission that has been everything for so long is now in its active phase. The time dilation on Miller's planet is the film's most precise scientific statement, and its most precisely calibrated emotional blow. The planet's proximity to Gargantua means that every hour spent on its surface corresponds to 7 years of time passing elsewhere. 7 years per hour, the ratio of the time dilation produced by the gravitational field at that orbital distance from a black hole of Gargantua's mass. The film gives us the calculation before the descent, gives us the awareness of the ratio, and then sends Cooper and Brand and Doyle down to the planet's surface with the full weight of the audience's knowledge of what the ratio means. Every moment on the surface is 7 years. The hour that the surface costs them costs Romilly 7 years. The hour costs Murph 7 years. The hour costs Tom 7 years. The hour is an hour of their experience and a decade of the lives of the people they love. This is the most extreme version of what the film has been building. The separation between the rate at which Cooper ages and the rate at which the people on Earth age, the divergence in their experiences of time that began when the Endurance launched and that will continue across the entire mission. But Miller's Planet is the moment where the divergence is not theoretical but immediate, where it is not months but years, where the specific violence of the time dilation is visible in the difference between Cooper entering the descent vehicle and Cooper exiting it, and finding that Romilly is 7 years older and has spent 7 years waiting for them, and that the messages from Earth have accumulated across 7 years of events that Cooper was not there for. The wave that kills Doyle and the explosion and the desperate extraction are contained in an hour that was also 7 years, and the two time frames, the hour and the 7 years, are both equally real and equally true. And their coexistence is the film's most precise image of what time actually is when physics, rather than ordinary experience, defines it. The confrontation between Cooper and man on the ice of man's planet is the film's morally darkest sequence, and it is dark in the specific way of the film's moral world. Not because man is a villain, but because man is a person who failed in a very human way, who made a decision under pressure that he cannot undo, who has been alone with the undoing of it for long enough that the aloneness has worked on him in ways he could not have predicted before it started. He tells Cooper about the isolation with a quality that is both true and manipulative, using the truth of the isolation to build the ground for what he is about to do, using the genuine horror of having been alone for years on a planet of ice to make Cooper sympathetic rather than suspicious. Cooper is sympathetic. Cooper does not suspect. The sympathy and the lack of suspicion are reasonable responses to the situation as it is presented. Man attacks from behind. This is the film's most stark statement about what extreme isolation does to a person. Not that it makes them evil, but that it makes them desperate, in ways that reach past the ordinary limits of their moral character. That the person they were before the isolation would not have done this, but the person they became after years of alone and cold, and the knowledge of what they did would. He does not want to kill Cooper. He needs to eliminate the person who will discover what he has done, needs to get to the Endurance and to one of the remaining planets, needs to survive in the way that desperation has reduced survival to, the removal of the obstacle. He breaks Cooper's visor. He leaves Cooper on the ice. He goes back to camp. Romilly's death has the specific quality of the deaths of careful people who are betrayed by their carefulness. Romilly, who has been the most patient and the most measured member of the crew, who waited 7 years on the Endurance and who has continued to wait and to work and to be careful throughout, accesses man's data equipment with the straightforward assumption of a scientist accessing data that the mission requires, and the trap that man set for exactly this access takes him without warning. He is there and then he is not there. And the quickness of it is the quickness of a thing that was designed to be quick, that has no interest in delay. Cooper's survival and his catching of the Endurance are the film's most viscerally dramatic sequence. The spinning of the Endurance visible from the lander as a tumbling object rather than a stable station. The rotation so fast that the docking rings cannot be reached in the ordinary way. The calculation required to match rotation, and approach and dock in a situation that the docking training did not include. That was not in any scenario that Cooper was prepared for. He does it because he is Cooper, because he is the person who was built for this, who flew experimental aircraft in circumstances that were not in the training manual, who has been landing planes and flying spacecraft with the specific quality of someone who finds that the constraints of the impossible are just a tighter version of the constraints of the merely very difficult. He matches the rotation. He docks. The Endurance survives with enough function to continue. The decision that follows, the decision about who goes to Edmund's planet and who goes into Gargantua, is not a difficult decision for Cooper, in the sense of being one he agonizes over, or that takes him a long time to make. It is a difficult decision in the sense of being one whose cost is enormous, whose cost is his life as he has understood it, whose cost is the concrete and specific future of being in the same world as his children, and watching them grow older and being their father in the present rather than in the past. He makes it because the mathematics require it, and because the mathematics requiring it is sufficient for him. Bran should go to Edmunds's planet. Someone must go into Gargantua. The calculation is clear. He goes. The data that TARS collects inside Gargantua and transmits to Cooper for encoding, the quantum data from the singularity, the specific physical information that exists only at the boundary of the space-time singularity, and that the gravitational equation needs to be completed, is the mechanism through which the scientific and the personal dimensions of the film's story come together. The data is scientific fact. The medium through which it is transmitted is Murph's watch, the watch that Cooper gave her on the day he left. A specific, personal, chosen object, invested with the weight of the day of departure and the promise of return, and the years of Murph keeping it even when she was angry at him for leaving. The quantum data is encoded in the motion of the second hand of a watch that a father gave his daughter when he could not bear to say goodbye properly, and the daughter kept the watch for decades, because you keep the things that are the last thing someone gave you before they disappeared. And when the watch begins to move in a specific way, she reads it because she was taught by her father to read things carefully. The moment when the old Murph in the hospital room understands what Cooper is trying to do in the Tesseract, understands that the ghost was her father, that the force that moved the books and settled the dust in patterns was him, that the coordinates in the watch were all part of the same loop, the same circle of a father trying to reach his daughter across the only medium available to him, is the film's most complete emotional moment. It is the moment when the mystery of the ghost in her room, which has been present in her life since she was 10 years old, resolves into the thing it always was. She knew there was someone there. She was right. It was him. He was always there. Man's planet is ice and cloud. It presents itself, on the initial approach, as potentially habitable. The cloud layer above it is thick, and the readings that come through the cloud layer suggest the possibility of an atmosphere and the possibility of a surface that could support life. And the accumulated optimism of the mission, the enormous weight of everything that has been invested in this journey, the years and the lives and the hope of the billions of people on Earth who do not know this mission is happening, but whose survival depends on its success, invests the approach with a quality of anticipation that the approach may not have earned, but that the situation makes inevitable. They want this planet to be viable. They need it to be viable. It is not viable. The clouds that look like atmosphere are frozen, suspended in the air of a world whose surface is ice and whose temperature is so extreme that nothing lives there and nothing could. Dr. Mann is alive. They find him in his hibernation pod. They wake him. He comes back to consciousness with the specific quality of someone returning from a very long sleep in a very remote place, which is exactly what he is. He is thin, and he is changed in the way of someone who has been alone for a very long time, and who is not entirely sure that the people now around him are real rather than the continuation of whatever inner world sustained him during the years of isolation. He says it is wonderful, the seeing of them. He says this with a specific intensity that is the intensity of someone who means it completely and whose meaning of it is larger than the words can contain. Man is a complicated man. The film takes time to show his complication, not through the specific moments of crisis that will come later, but through the texture of his company, the way he speaks about the mission and about the planet, and about his years of isolation, and about what it means to be there with them. He is the person that Brand has trusted most, whose signal they followed, whose assessment of the planet's potential was the reason they came here, rather than to Edmonds's planet. He is brilliant, and he is deeply alone, and he is, underneath the brilliance and the company and the apparent relief of rescue, something that the film does not announce, but accumulates evidence for. Desperate. He is desperate in the way of someone who has done something they cannot undo and who has been alone with the having done it for long enough that the alone has done something to their relationship with the truth of what they did. He sent back a signal saying the planet was promising when the planet was not promising. He sent back the signal because he could not face the alternative, could not face the reality of dying alone on a planet of ice, without anyone ever coming, without the comfort of believing that the mission had a purpose and that the purpose would be fulfilled. He sent the signal as a kind of lie to himself as much as to the mission, a lie that the years of waiting had made necessary for survival. And then people came. The crisis on man's planet unfolds with the specific quality of a betrayal by someone you trusted precisely because of their reputation for being trustworthy. Man tries to kill Cooper. He takes Cooper out onto the ice away from the camp, and he tells Cooper things about the isolation and the planet and the years of waiting that are the preamble to the action he is about to take. And then he takes the action. He tries to kill Cooper. He leaves Cooper on the ice with his suit damaged. He goes back to the camp to take the mission's lander and get to the Endurance, and from the Endurance to one of the remaining candidate planets to complete the mission with Brand and Romilly instead of Cooper. He kills Romilly. This is the most stark statement of what the desperation has done to him. Romilly, the patient physicist who waited 7 years on the Endurance, who has been nothing but careful and kind, and professionally dedicated throughout, is killed in a booby trap that man set before leading Cooper out onto the ice. The booby trap was set to prevent anyone from accessing the data on man's equipment that would reveal the fabricated signal, and Romilly accesses the data, and the trap goes off, and Romilly is gone. Cooper survives. The suit holds long enough. Brand finds him on the ice, and they get back to the lander, and they pursue Man, who has reached the Endurance. Man attempts to dock with the Endurance manually, without the pilot's skill that the docking requires, without Cooper, who is the only person left who can dock properly. He attempts it anyway, and the docking fails, and the failure is catastrophic. The docking collar breaches explosively. The decompression is violent. Man is killed instantly by his own inadequacy and his own desperation, and the specific mechanical fact of a docking collar that will not forgive an imprecise approach. The Endurance is damaged and spinning. Cooper catches it. He catches the spinning Endurance in the lander with the specific impossible precision of someone who has been a test pilot, who has been flying experimental aircraft in conditions that required this kind of improvised precision since before the world changed, and who is doing now what he was, in some sense, born and trained to do. He matches the rotation. He docks. They survive. They are alive. The Endurance is damaged but functional enough. They have two options. They have Edmonds's planet, which is where Brand always believed they should go, and they have the limitations of their remaining fuel, which cannot take them both to Edmonds's planet and back through the wormhole to Earth. Cooper calculates. The calculation arrives at a number that requires a decision. Someone must stay and someone must go. If the Endurance uses the gravitational slingshot of Gargantua to send Brand to Edmund's planet, it will not have the fuel to follow her. Someone must ride the slingshot into Gargantua instead of following Brand. Cooper decides to go into Gargantua. He tells Brand this with the specific directness of someone who has made a calculation and who is reporting its result, who is not performing sacrifice or making a dramatic choice, but is simply applying the same logic he has been applying since the farm. The logic of the useful thing to do in the situation that is presenting itself. The logic of the pilot who reads the instruments and makes the call. He will go into Gargantua. The slingshot will send Brand to Edmund's planet with enough velocity to reach it. TARS will go with him into Gargantua. Together they will collect data from inside the black hole, data that the gravitational equation needs, data that cannot be obtained from outside the event horizon, and they will transmit it to Brand before the singularity ends their ability to transmit anything. Brand says what she can say, which is not enough for the situation, and which she knows is not enough, but which is all that the situation permits. Cooper separates his module from the Endurance, and the lander fires toward Gargantua, and the Endurance carries Brand toward Edmonds's planet, and the separation is complete. They watch each other's trajectories on the instruments until the trajectories diverge too much for the instruments to hold both of them. The approach to Gargantua from close range has a quality that is different from the approach to Miller's planet or the transit through the wormhole. It has the quality of finality, of approaching something from which there is no return, of making an approach that has been calculated to end in a specific way and that will end in that way, and that cannot be altered once it has been committed to. Cooper and Tars fall toward the event horizon of Gargantua with the specific quality of something irreversible being done at the moment it is being done, with the awareness of the finality fully present in the doing of it. The event horizon, the boundary that light cannot cross, the point past which nothing returns, the specific edge of a black hole at which the physics of the universe, as Cooper knows it, gives way to something else. He crosses it. He crosses it in the lander, with Tars. And what he finds on the other side is not darkness, not the nothing that the event horizon implies from outside, but a space, a place, a structure that is something other than what he was trained to encounter, or what physics, as he understands it, predicted. It is the Tesseract. The Tesseract is a space that has been constructed, not by a natural process, not by the physics of the black hole, but by something, by someone, by an intelligence that built it for a purpose and that placed it here, inside Gargantua, at the specific location where it would be encountered by the person who followed this mission into this black hole. It is a structure of infinite library shelves, infinite corridors, infinite recursions of bookshelf and time. And the books on the shelves are not books, but moments. Moments of his daughter's life. Moments of the room that contains his daughter. The specific hours of the bedroom where Murph grew up. And the bookshelf that was always falling, and the dust that was always settling in patterns, and the ghost that Murph always believed was communicating with her. He is the ghost. He was always the ghost. The force that moved the books was him, or the version of him, that is here now in the Tesseract, reaching through the moment shelves toward the moments he can see. He can see Murph's room from multiple moments simultaneously. The room as it was when she was 10, when she was a teenager, when she was young, when she was older. All of the room's moments accessible to him from the Tesseract's structure, which organizes time as space so that its entire extent is navigable rather than experienced sequentially. He can reach the room. He can push on it. He can move things on the shelves. He is the ghost. He tries to communicate. He pushes books from the shelves, specific books in a specific pattern, trying to convey the coordinates, the message that brought him to the facility in the first place, the message that was the beginning of the whole chain that ends here. He is sending the message that he received, completing the loop, closing the circle that he and Murph together traced from its beginning to its end. He is communicating across time in the specific way that the Tesseract makes available, not through ordinary communication, not through anything that the physics of the world outside the Tesseract would permit, but through the manipulation of physical objects in the moments of the past that are visible to him from where he is. Tars collects the quantum data inside Gargantua. In the singularity's vicinity, Tars is gathering the information that the gravitational equation needs. The quantum data from the singularity, the data that exists only here and that can only be gathered here. And that is, if it can be communicated, the solution to the problem that has been waiting on Earth for decades. Cooper and Tars work out a method. Tars will encode the data in gravitational waves, and Cooper will use the watch, Murph's watch, the watch he gave her before he left, that she has kept all these years, to transmit those gravitational waves through the second hand, microsecond by microsecond, variation by variation, The quantum data encoded in the motion of a watch hand that his daughter will receive in the room where she grew up. If she looks at the watch she's kept all these years, if she reads the variations in the second hand's movement as the code they contain, he finds her. He finds her in the room, finds the moment in the room when she is an adult, when she has come back to the childhood room, when she has the watch in her hand and she is looking at it. He can see her. He can see her from the tesseract as a specific moment, a moment he can address, a moment that is both past and present, and that is accessible to him in the way that all moments in the tesseract are accessible, navigably, directly, as a position in the structure rather than as a point in a flow. He transmits. He watches her receive. He watches her understand. Murph receives the data. The watch's second hand moves in the specific way that Cooper is producing, the gravitational variations encoded in the motion, and she reads it in the way that she has always read things, with the complete attention of someone who has been trained by her father and by her own nature to take the data seriously, to not dismiss what cannot be immediately explained, to look for the pattern. She reads it. She has the equation. She has the quantum data that completes the gravitational equation that her father's mentor has spent decades unable to solve. She has what she needs. Cooper lets go. He lets go of the tesseract's structure, releases himself from the moment shelves and the corridor of his daughter's life and the specific, beautiful, terrible intimacy of having been present in her room across all of its moments, and the tesseract releases him, and the bulk beings, or whatever constructed the tesseract, have done what they constructed it to do, and he is no longer inside it. He is in space. He is near Saturn. He is outside the wormhole, on the Earth side, in the space that human ships travel, and where human search and rescue might reach him if they are looking. They are looking. A ship finds him. He is brought aboard. He wakes up in a room that is full of the specific quality of cleanliness and order and the absence of dust. The quality of a world that has changed since he left it. A world in which Murph received the data and the equation was solved, and the colonies launched, and the people were saved, and the dust is no longer the only thing the Earth can produce. He is alive. He has been saved from Gargantua by something that built the Tesseract. Built it specifically for him, placed it inside the black hole specifically for him, knew that he would be there, and knew what he would need, and provided it. He was placed there. He was planned for. The loop is complete. He is in a hospital. He is in a space station, Cooper Station, which has been named for him, for Murph's father, for the person whose transmission made the solution possible. A station that orbits the Earth, in the new arrangement that the colonies required and that the equation made possible. He is 90-something years old in official terms. The years have passed on Earth while he did not age at the same rate, and the official age accumulated whether or not his body experienced it. He is the same man who left the farm. He is also enormously displaced, enormously out of time, enormously in the position of someone who has been away for longer than they expected, and who has returned to a world that has been changed by their going. Murph comes to see him. She is old, very old, older than he has ever seen her, older than he thought he would see her, the age that only arrives after a full life, the age of someone who has done everything they set out to do and who is at the point where the doing is mostly done and what remains is the being. She has her family around her, children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. The people who exist because she survived and worked and solved the equation and saved the species, the specific human continuation of the person he knew as a 10-year-old standing in the dust. She tells him she always knew he would come back. She tells him, with the specific gentleness of someone who has waited a very long time and has arrived at peace with the waiting, that a parent should not have to see their child die. She asks him to go. She asks him to go find Brand, because Brand is out there on Edmonds's planet, beginning the colony, and someone should be with her. He goes. He takes a ship, one of the new ships, the ships of the post-equation world, the ships that belong to a civilization that has solved the problem of gravity and can build what it needs to build and go where it needs to go. He goes toward the wormhole and through it, and toward Edmund's planet and toward whatever comes next. And the film ends with Brand on Edmonds's planet, alone, in the light of the New World sun, doing the work of the first day of a new beginning, in the helmet and the suit of someone who has arrived somewhere, finally, that she intended to arrive. Now that the story has gently unfolded, it can be interesting to reflect on some of the ideas behind the film and what it was reaching toward in its long and patient telling. Interstellar is a film about the longest possible love. Love that crosses not just physical distance, but temporal distance. Love that operates across years and decades, and the relativistic distortions of extreme gravity. Love that is tested not by the ordinary challenges of relationship, but by the most fundamental challenge of presence. The challenge of being separated from the person you love by physics, by time, by the structure of space-time itself, in ways that make even communication a complex and partial thing. The film asks what love is when distance is not measurable in the ordinary sense, when absence is not simply the absence of a person from a room, but the absence of shared time, when the years that pass for one person do not pass for the other, when the child grows old, while the parent does not. The father-daughter relationship at the film's center is its emotional engine, and it is given the specific weight that the film requires it to have by being established in great detail before the separation occurs. The scene in the truck where Cooper teaches Murph how to approach problems, the scene with the broken truck on the dirt road, where he could have called for help but uses the breakdown as a teaching opportunity, is the film's most important scene in terms of establishing who these two people are to each other. He is not just her father. He is the person who shaped the way she thinks, who gave her the framework through which she has been approaching the world ever since, who is so deeply embedded in her intellectual formation that his absence is not the absence of a person, but the absence of a way of thinking, a way of being with problems that she had from him. The ghost in Murph's room is the film's most perfectly constructed plot element because it functions simultaneously as a mystery, as a horror, as a comfort, and as the mechanism through which the entire story loops back on itself. It is a mystery because it has no immediately available explanation. It is a horror because unexplained forces acting on objects in your room have the quality of a haunting. It is a comfort for Murph because she believes the ghost is trying to communicate with her rather than threaten her, believes it is a presence rather than an absence, believes, as she believes throughout the film, as the fundamental conviction that the story validates that there is someone there. And it is the loop's mechanism because the ghost is Cooper, and Cooper is the ghost because Cooper is in the Tesseract, and Cooper is in the Tesseract because he followed the coordinates to the facility, and he followed the coordinates because the coordinates were sent by the ghost, which is Cooper, in a loop that has no first cause and no last effect, but that simply is a circle of cause and effect, in which the cause and the effect are the same event seen from different temporal positions. The time dilation sequences, Miller's planet most significantly, but also the accumulated difference between Cooper's aging and Murph's aging across the whole mission, are the film's most direct engagement with the specific kind of grief that space-time physics makes possible. When Cooper watches the messages from Tom and Murph after returning from Miller's planet, the watching of the messages is an experience of loss that is unlike any other kind of loss in ordinary storytelling. He did not choose to miss those years. He did not choose to miss Murph's childhood. The physics chose it for him. The gravitational reality of a planet close to a black hole chose it. And the choice to go to that planet was made in ignorance of how close to Gargantua the planet actually was. The loss is absolute, and it is not anyone's fault, which makes it a very specific kind of grief. The grief of something taken not by malice or negligence, but by the impersonal force of natural law. This is the film's deepest emotional territory. The grief of time passing differently for different people. The grief of a separation that is not simply distance, but a divergence in the rate at which time passes. The grief that is not the grief of death, which at least has a clean ending, a moment when the absence begins, but the ongoing grief of a life continuing elsewhere at a different rate. Murph grows up. She becomes a physicist. She becomes a person of enormous consequence. She does all of this without her father, who is, from his perspective, only briefly gone. From her perspective, he left when she was 10, and he did not come back until she was very old, and he was still, essentially, the person who left. The asymmetry of their experiences of the same separation is the film's most painful element, and the scene of their reunion in the hospital room, where she is dying and he is unchanged, and the cost of the separation is written in the difference between their bodies. Is the cost paid in full, presented without softening? Gravity is the film's central scientific and symbolic concern, and it is handled with a care that rewards attention. Gravity is what keeps us on the Earth. Gravity is what the crops need. The specific gravitational conditions of the planet's surface that farming and architecture and all of human civilization have been built to accommodate. Gravity is what will kill the Earth, because the blight that is destroying the crops is a function of the atmospheric chemistry, and the atmospheric chemistry cannot be changed without the equation. And the equation requires quantum data from inside a black hole, and getting to the black hole requires escaping Earth's gravity, which is a problem. A real engineering problem that the film takes seriously, that Cooper's mission takes seriously, that the entire hidden NASA program has been structured around. The gravitational equation is what frees humanity from the gravity that is killing it. Gravity is the problem and the solution. Gravity is the thing that holds you to the people you love, and the thing that kills the world that your people live in. The film's scientific ambition is worth acknowledging because it is unusual in mainstream cinema, and because it produces the film's most extraordinary images. Kip Thorne, the theoretical physicist who consulted on the film and who wrote a companion book to it, contributed the specific visual representation of Gargantua that the film uses, a representation of a black hole rendered with equations rather than artistic interpretation, with the specific lensing patterns and accretion disk structure that general relativity predicts for a black hole of Gargantua's mass and spin. The image of Gargantua that the film produced was the first visually accurate simulation of a black hole ever rendered, and its accuracy was not incidental to the film's ambition. It was the expression of the film's conviction that the universe is more extraordinary than any invented image could be, that the truth of what Gargantua looks like is more beautiful and more terrifying than a CGI approximation, guided only by aesthetics. The Tesseract is the film's most speculative element, and also its most emotionally essential. The physical plausibility of the Tesseract, the question of whether beings of higher dimensions could construct a 5-dimensional space inside a black hole that would allow a human being to interact with points in time as though they were points in space, is left explicitly to the film's future beings, the evolved humans who build it, the bulk beings who construct it. Whatever intelligence has developed in the far future of the species that Cooper's transmission helps save. The film does not claim that the Tesseract is physically rigorous. It claims that the Tesseract is emotionally true, that love of the kind that Cooper has for Murph, placed in the right circumstances, produces the kind of data transmission that the quantum data required. Gravity, the film suggests, is the force that crosses dimensions, the force whose ability to cross the bulk, the higher dimensional space in which our universe is embedded, makes it the medium through which the Tesseract communicates. Love, Brand said earlier in the film, is the one thing we are capable of perceiving that transcends dimensions of time and space. The Tesseract is the film's way of taking that claim seriously, of building a physical structure in which it is not only emotionally true, but operationally true. Professor Brand's equation, and the lie he tells about it, is the film's moral complication, the element that prevents the film from being simply a story of heroic sacrifice and scientific triumph, and that gives it the specific weight of a story about what people do when they face an impossible choice. Brand has known for years that Plan A is impossible. He has known that the equation cannot be solved without the quantum data from inside a black hole, and he has known that obtaining that data requires someone to go into the black hole, and he has believed that no one would volunteer to go into the black hole on behalf of a plan that he could not guarantee would work. So he maintained the pretense that Plan A was possible, that the equation could be solved from outside, that the sacrifice he was asking Cooper and the others to make could lead to the salvation of the people on Earth, rather than simply to the salvation of the embryos of the species. He is wrong about the psychology of the people involved. Cooper would have gone anyway. The film makes this clear, not through statement, but through character, through everything we know about Cooper, and what drives him, and what his relationship to the mission is. He goes into Gargantua knowing the mission will likely kill him. He goes because it is the useful thing to do, because the calculation requires it, because the mission is larger than he is. Brand's lie was not necessary, and its discovery, by Amelia Brand, who reads her father's private notes when the mission is already underway, and who must then carry the knowledge that what she was told about Plan A was not what her father knew about Plan A, costs the mission the specific quality of shared purpose that keeps the team together in extremity. It is a betrayal made from love, from a father's love for his daughter, and from a scientist's love for the species he is trying to save, and it is still a betrayal. Tars is the film's most quietly successful character, and his success is a function of a design decision that runs counter to the genre's conventional approaches to artificial intelligence. He is not a humanoid robot. He is a rectangular configuration of panels, mobile and reconfigurable, with a voice but no face, with a dry humor that was programmed into him by someone who thought carefully about what a person working with him for months in isolation would need from an artificial companion. His humor is calibrated. He can dial it up and down. And this capacity is played for humor itself in one of the film's few genuinely comic exchanges. But it is also a real feature of a system designed to function in human environments. He does not want. He does not fear. He processes the situation, and he acts on the processing, and the acting on the processing is, across the film, consistently good. Good in the sense of purposeful, and good in the sense of ethical, which is not always the same thing, but in Tars's case is. His willingness to enter Gargantua alongside Cooper, his willingness to go to a place from which he will almost certainly not return, to collect data that he will then transmit in the knowledge that the transmission is likely the last thing he'd, is presented without ceremony and without drama, because Tars does not do ceremony and does not do drama. He does what needs to be done. The practicality of his courage is the specific kind of courage that the film values most highly. Not to the dramatic sacrifice, not the gesture, not the thing done for its own emotional resonance, but the thing done because it is the right thing and the necessary thing, and because who else will do it? The bulk beings, the future humans, the evolved intelligence that built the Tesseract and placed it inside Gargantua, and arranged for Cooper to be there and to have what he needed to do what needed to be done, are the film's most explicit statement of its temporal optimism. The film believes that the species survives. It believes that humanity, freed from the gravity of the dying Earth by the equation that Murph solves, spreads through space and develops in ways that make the crisis of the dust and the dying crops look like the necessary pressure that produced the necessary response. The bulk beings do not intervene in the crisis. They do not prevent it. They allow it to proceed, and they provide, from the position of their enormous temporal distance, the tool, the Tesseract, that allows the person inside the crisis to solve it from within it. This is not omnipotence. It is a very specific kind of assistance. The provision of the space in which the right person, in the right moment, can do the right thing. The film's title carries its meaning quietly throughout. Interstellar. Between the stars, the space between stars, the void that is not simply the absence of stars, but the specific quality of a space so large that the stars themselves are small in it. The film is about this vastness not as abstraction, but as experience, as the specific experience of the people who cross it, who spend months and years in it, who live in the interstellar void in a ship that spins to produce gravity, because the void does not provide gravity, who look out at the stars from the void and understand what the space between them actually is. Cooper crosses interstellar space in pursuit of a home for his species. And the irony that the crossing requires him to leave his home is the specific irony the film is built around. You cannot save what you love from where you love it. You must go away. You must spend the years away, and the years will pass differently for you and for the people you left. And you will come back to a world that has moved at a different rate. The crossing is the price of the saving. Murph's name and its meaning, Murphy's Law, the principle that if something can go wrong, it will, is paid off in the film's resolution in a way that Cooper explained to her as a child. You name the problem not to be defeated by it, but to engage with it. The law that things go wrong is not a counsel of despair. It is a counsel of preparation. The recognition that difficulty is the condition of action, and that action, taken in full knowledge of the difficulty, is how things that matter get done. Murph lives her entire life in this framework, in the framework her father gave her when she was 10 years old on the farm in the dust. And the framework is what allows her to look at the watch's second hand and read in its variation the quantum data that the equation needs. She was prepared for the wrong thing. She engaged with it. She named it, and she solved it. And so the story of Interstellar leaves us with Brand on the surface of Edmonds's planet. In the first light of a new world, doing the first work of the first day of a new beginning, the specific quiet image of a person who has arrived somewhere after a very long journey and who is beginning the thing that the journey was for. Behind her is everything that made the arrival possible. The dying Earth and the hidden facility and the mission and the wormhole and the planets and the black hole and the tesseract and the watch and the equation and Murph, old and at peace, on the station that bears her father's name. Cooper is somewhere in the void between her world and the wormhole, traveling toward her through the interstellar dark among the stars. The space between them is enormous, and it is not empty. The film's treatment of time is worth examining not just in its science fiction dimensions, but in its emotional ones, because the two are inseparable in Interstellar, in a way that they are not always inseparable in science fiction. The time dilation and the relativistic effects and the tesseract are not just plot mechanisms. They are the literal expression of what the film means by love over distance, the making concrete and physical of the specific experience of loving someone who is far away, of having the years pass differently, of missing time that cannot be recovered. The physics of the film is the emotional content of the film made into physical law. You can love someone across years, across distances, across the structures of space-time itself. And the loving costs you the time you spend not with them. And the cost is real, and the love is also real, and the question of whether the cost is worth the love is the question that the characters in the film are living rather than debating. The way the film distributes its emotional weight across the two timelines, Cooper's mission timeline and Murph's Earth timeline, is its most sophisticated formal achievement. We follow Cooper through his mission in something approximating real time, moving through events at the pace that Cooper experiences them. We follow Murph's life in compressed glimpses, the messages, the moments, the specific ages and stages of her development, and the compression of her timeline against the relative continuity of Cooper's creates the film's most affecting quality, the sense that Murph's life is passing faster than we can hold it, that the years of her growing up and becoming and achieving are moving at a rate that does not permit the same attention that Cooper's hours of experience receive. We see her at 10, and then at 23, and then at old age. We see Cooper at every moment of his mission. The film mourns, in its structure, the years of a child's life that a parent is absent for, not by describing the mourning, but by enacting it. The question that Brand asked Cooper in The Void, about whether love transcends dimensions, about whether the feeling of connection to Edmonds across the distance of space is evidence of something real, something with ontological weight, is answered by the Tesseract. The Tesseract is a structure built by beings of higher dimensions, built inside a black hole, built specifically to allow Cooper to transmit quantum data through gravity to a watch in a specific room in a specific moment in time. The beings who built it because they wanted the species to survive. And the species survives because a father loves his daughter, and the daughter loves her father, and the love produces, in Cooper, the specific intensity of attention that allows him to find the right moment in the Tesseract, and the love produces, in Murph, the specific quality of attention that allows her to read the watch's second hand as the data it contains. The love is the mechanism. Bran was right. The film built a physical structure to prove she was right, and placed it at the literal center of a black hole. And that is how seriously Interstellar takes the question she asked. Rest well.